Good evening. Welcome to another installment of the Golden Age of Leather. Biker stories from the late 70s clear till present day. And if you're just joining the channel, welcome. If not, like, subscribe, share, comment. Tell me your biker story. I'm always eager to hear them. I got plenty. It's just remembering them now that's getting a little rough because I killed off a lot of brain cells over the years. Hopefully you can hear me all right. I'll try to talk a little louder. We apparently had a little issue with the last video, but I was also looking down reading, and I'm not using the microphone because it was cutting out. But if we need to get back to that, we will. Anyway, I'll try to talk loud. I have this problem because I'm kind of a big guy, and when I talk, I don't talk very loud, and my wife doesn't hear for shit. Don't tell her I said that. Anyway, I get accused if I don't talk loud, everybody's like, what? But if I talk loud, everybody thinks I'm yelling at them. So there's our problem. Anyway, today we're going to talk a little bit, when you're in a motorcycle club or just riding, being a biker, living a lifestyle, it's not all just about motorcycles, although it is, but, somewhere in between the wine, women, and song, there's some fun activities, and we're going to touch on some of that, and then we'll probably swerve up into the later era when I joined a motorcycle club that was a support club for the Bandidos called the Los Lobos, and we'll talk about that hopefully. If not, that's where we'll start on the next one. Anyway, oh geez, I don't even remember the year, to be honest. It was way back. One of my friends, he was a friend long before. In fact, we knew each other vaguely, like in grade school. But in our later years, we were pretty good friends, and he ended up in the club there in the Freedom Riders for a while. And we used to go and do all kinds of things. And the guy was like a gun savant. I mean, if you wanted to be afraid of somebody, that was the guy, because not only was he big, he was very knowledgeable about firearms and ammunition, and taught me a whole lot about it, to be honest. But we used to go out and do a little hunting together, so we're going to kind of just touch on a couple hunting stories that happened, and at the suggestion, not everybody wants to hear about somebody getting their ass kicked or gruesome murders or whatever. So we're going to lighten things up and talk about a couple of hunting trips that kind of just merge into one in my mind. But I can remember it started out, I hadn't really ever been hunting. And I've shot a lot of guns, but I wasn't a great shot. And that's how I earned the nickname the Dead-Eye Doughboy, because I got buck fever and I missed a shot I should have got. Anyway, me and Spokes, that's my friend's club name. Bob's his real name. That's as far as we're going to go with it. But we decided to go take a little hunting trip, and we were going to be up there. This is in the mountains outside of Laramie, Wyoming, if you're familiar with that area. And beautiful country, really. And you can actually get around there, and drive through the hill country up there and into the mountains. And there's a lot of Colorado license plates over there. Anyway, we got all our stuff together. We had supplies for about 3 days. We had probably 2 gallons of Lord Calvert whiskey, and at the time I was a smoker, he was a smoker. We had a carton of cigarettes each and other things, I'm not going to mention here, but we had the materials necessary to have a really good time. And we got rolling early. The sun was coming up, and we're winding through the mountains of Wyoming in his Ford pickup, an older one, and super nice truck. Wish we had it today, but we get up there, the sun's just coming up, just prime time. This is funny about hunting when you're up there because you won't hear anybody, and then all of a sudden there's just enough daylight. You'll hear one shot crack off, and then it sounds like a war zone. It's like somebody has to break the silence. And we got up there, and we're rolling through the hills, and Spoke says to me, he says, "Hey, man, I know this spot, and every time I go there, I see deer over there." And I thought, well, we haven't even set up camp. He's like, "No, let's just check it out." So we get our guns and we get out, we get to the spot, and sure as shit, there's more deer down there than you could ever believe. Probably 20 of them, just sitting, just eating and looking around. And I mean, you could go looking for weeks, and I have looked for days, and we'll get onto that one next. But there they were, and I was super excited, and he's like, "Go ahead, man, take the shot." So I get up there, and I forgot everything I knew about shooting, and I just got him in my sights, pulled the trigger, and I want to say I missed, because I did. But there was couple of little tiny blood spots, and we tracked that thing down and never did find it. But I'm sure he just grazed something. But so then, at the same time, backtracking just a little bit, Spokes is like, "Give me that gun," because he didn't have his with him. Well, actually, it was his gun. We're kind of sharing it at the time, and he took a couple of shots and dropped a pretty good sized deer. And I mean, we haven't even set up camp. So okay, great. So we got it. We got that deer dressed out and got it back to our camp, hung it up, and it was warm at that time of year, which is really unusual. But we did what we needed to do and ended up having to run that deer clear back into town because it was just too warm up there, and we ended up going back up when you have a couple tags to fill. So we went back up there, and we had 3 days worth of party material. So we spent another day up there, and as memory serves me, on that trip, we filled out the tag. But it seems like, and the problem I have is, and I'm sure Spokes will agree, some of these trips kind of merge into one. But the next time we went up there, I had an old Chevy pickup that looked like a forest ranger truck. This thing was gut rusted. I bought it from the Gypsies, and if you've ever lived in Cheyenne, you know who the Gypsies are. But this thing was so rusty, we called it Rusty Truck. I turned the corner, and a coffee cup rolled across the floor and fell out through the gap between the bottom of the door and the floor. That's how rusty it was. But it ran great. And like I say, it looked like a Forest Service truck. So every time we turn a corner up there, everybody'd be like dropping their guns and looking around, trying to do whatever they weren't supposed to and not get caught. But one thing I recollect about that is we were going down the road, and like a branch popped up off of the road, because it's in the backwoods, and it popped up off the road and went right through the floorboard, and about took out Spokes' family jewels. Pretty funny there. But we were going down the road, and we saw a deer, and he's like, "Stop!" And I stopped the truck, and basically dude skidded down the road. And anyway, I don't want to get into too many logistics of anything that may or may not be technically legal, but anyway, we got a deer over there at some point, and this dude, I'm telling you, it was way back off the road, and this dude packed that deer on his back, and it was probably a couple 100 pounds. And that's a feat. I'm gonna tell you right now. That's when I knew, I'm like, hey, this guy's like a mini Godzilla. You don't want to make him mad. And then the final little hunting excursion we took before we all kind of moved different places and so forth and so on. We'd been up there for like 4 days. This is what I was saying. We didn't see a deer at all. And then finally, the last little bit, which is funny because we were sitting in the trees in the morning when the sun comes up. It wasn't elk season, but guess what? You see elk all over the place. You can't hunt them. And if it was elk season, you'd never see them. Anyway, we finally saw this buck and took a shot at it. I believe I shot it. And what happened was, I thought I shot it in the head, but that's not what happened. I ended up shooting it through the antler. And when I did that, it knocked it out. It didn't kill it. It just knocked it unconscious, apparently. And so we go walking up there, very, you don't want to just go walking up on something like that. And we go walking up there. And it's a good thing Bob had, I think it was a 45, like a dirty, hairy gun. It was like 1.5 feet long. This thing, it was silver and big. And you sure as hell didn't want to see it come out. Anyway, we went walking up there, and I can remember that Spokes grabbed the thing by the antlers and to pop its head up to take a look at it. And when he did, the thing woke up. And when it woke up, it was mad, and it broke the antler off. And so we're kind of standing there looking at this thing, holding it down, and he managed to get that 45 out and dispatch it. But it wasn't pretty, to say the least. Another note about all that is, so we get back, we're dressing out these deer, because once you kill a deer, you got to clean it. And then once you have it clean, it doesn't just jump into the freezer. So you've got to cut it up and put it in paper or bags or whatever you're going to do with it. And if you've never done that, it's a job. But Spokes' dad, he was a really cool dude. We used to smoke his cheap cigarettes and drink his Carlin's Black Label and his Schmidt beer. It used to drive him nuts. But he used to be a butcher and have a meat locker. And that guy, we were out there still trying to get some stuff going, and he's like, go get me this, this, and this, and we got it for him. And I'm probably going to tell you, within 20 minutes, he had a full-size deer completely cut up, wrapped in paper, and ready to go. It was an amazing thing. So that just tells you what a little knowledge and old age and treachery will get you. But he was a cool dude, and I miss him, and I know that Spokes does too. So that's pretty much it. Spokes was a wild man. He had a pretty nice little Sportster. He had a Camaro that would beat about any car in town, and he was a wild and crazy guy back in those days. He's settled down. He's a family guy. He's no longer in Wyoming. He's somewhere else, but we still stay in touch, obviously. And it was a good experience in my life. He actually took me out after I missed and showed me how to shoot. And he's the guy that, he would load his own ammunition. He was the guy that told me, you can't have an accurate shot with a factory load. And he was right about that, really. And taught me how to be a good shot. We took his 700 Win Mag, which is a giant gun, and we were hitting things from 700 yards, which that's just under a half a mile. So if you can take a shot like that, you're a pretty good shot. And he was better than that. I don't know how he is today. I assume he still shoots. I don't know. I don't. I'll have to ask him. So we're going to wind back out of there and get back onto the motorcycle thing. And I'm going to wind this up tonight, because it's a little bit later than I'd planned, and hell, I don't know, I'm old, I'm tired, I gotta go take my Geritol and turn it in for the night. Not really. Anyway, we're gonna start out about how I got into the Bandidos support club, the Los Lobos. And it all started one day when I saw another friend of mine. Well, we were friends. We're not really friends anymore to speak of. I don't hate the guy, but after the things that went down, I don't think that we have a real friendship. I have no respect for him. I'll say that right to his face, because he was a liar, to put it politely, on some things, but we're not going to delve into a lot of bad blood and ex-club business. But anyway, I'd been toying around with getting in a club, and then me and the camera lady there were walking through the grocery store one day, and we see him, and he's got this really cool cut on, red and gold, with a wolf's head. I have a picture of him on my Facebook if you're familiar, but anyway, I would insert it here, but I'm not going to do that right now. We're not really editing these, so that's why they ramble and they're boring. But anyway, he's like, knew I was a biker, and we started talking, and then the camera lady really encouraged me to go and check it out. So he said, well, come to the next meeting, you know, and just be a hang around. That's the first tier of joining any 1% style motorcycle club, isn't being a prospect. Because they don't want you as a prospect till they get to know you. If they get to know you and you hang around and you prove out to be likable and cool, and you know how to keep your mouth shut, things like that, then you can work your way into being a prospect. But at first, you just a hang around, somebody that comes and checks it out. So I agreed, and I went to a meeting, and I met some interesting characters there. One of which is a good friend of mine to this day, my brother X, if you're familiar with him. I gave him a shout out last time on X's Chop-A-Blog Shop. You can go and check that channel out. It's pretty cool. And we're still good friends, and there's a few other people, and we'll get into all that on the next video here. So as soon as I can summon the camera lady to come and shut this thing off, then we'll probably wind this up. But anyway, as my brother X would say, keep the rubber side down and the sunny side up, and enjoy.